Well, we can go live now to Behnam Ben Taleblu, who's here in the studio with me. He's a senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defence of Democracies, a think tank that takes a hard line on Iran. Very good to have you back with us once again. Do we have any indications, or at least in your assessment, what the potential for this attack from Iran could look like?
Pleasure to be with you again. Unfortunately, there's a whole host of options that are available to the Islamic Republic. One that the press has been talking about for the past few days is something more direct and overt from the Islamic Republic, either ballistic missile, cruise missile, or drone, or some combination of these. What is unknown at the moment would be what would be the exact target of that. Would it be Israeli territory? Because you've had Israeli officials talk both on Twitter and in the press about responding against Iranian territory if there was such an attack. As well as, of course, if the Iranians choose to hit an Israeli embassy or consulate in the region, or potentially if they couple this with something in the maritime domain, or if they couple this with one of their proxy attacks, be it against the US or Israel.
So a range of potentials, of course, at this particular moment. Does Israel have the defense capabilities for those kinds of attacks?
It's an excellent question, because in terms of coverage, Israel has one of the best, if not among the top 5, best integrated air and missile defense architecture system in the world. So in this sense, you want to defend against low and slow flying threats like cruise missiles and drones, but also high and fast flying threats like ballistic missiles. But with some of these things, if they're salvos, it could be a numbers game. It could also be decoys. There's a lot that goes into ballistic missile defense.
And so if this does happen, what kind of response do you think we could see from Israel? Do you then think that there is the potential for this to go back and forth into some kind of volley between Iran and Israel?
It certainly raises the risk of it, because while the biggest ballistic missile barrage the U.S. received in its history since the end of World War II was when the Iranians fired precision strike ballistic missiles at bases in Iraq after the U.S. killed Qasem Soleimani in 2020, to date, Iran has never publicly launched ballistic missiles, or cruise missiles for that matter, at Israeli territory, nor has it, in the past 11 ballistic missile operations it's undergone in recent history, ever attempted to strike a defended target. So it would be a game changer for the Iranians to even attempt to strike, let alone land a blow against the Israelis.
And so what would that kind of escalation, in your words, a game changer then mean for the entire region? I mean, how dangerous do you see this moment as being?
Well, while I do believe it would be exceptionally dangerous, it's important to front-load that danger now to make sure that the Islamic Republic doesn't do this, or limits it, or contains, or constrains, or retains whatever kind of military option it's thinking about right now. You know, in my view, there are still going to be debates up until the last minute in Iran. The Islamic Republic did not get to be 45 years old by being suicidal, and it knows that striking, again, Israeli territory with these advanced long-range strike weapons would be game-changing.
And with regards to the United States, President Biden has said that support in the event of an Iranian attack would be ironclad. You know, what kind of support do you think could come from Washington here? Also, when we know that there had been some frustration, criticism with regards to that attack on Syria.
There's been diplomatic distance, unfortunately, between the Biden administration and the Israelis over the war in Gaza. This, as I think, has redounded to a strategic and political and messaging advantage for the Islamic Republic of Iran. But in the event of an attack, I would expect the administration to bridge that distance quite closely. You've already had strong rhetoric from the president that you mentioned. You even have the deployment, I think, of more naval vessels from America heading to the eastern Mediterranean. And you had the highest-ranking U.S. military official in the region, the CENTCOM commander, General Kurilla, in Israel just recently as well. All of this front-loads the deterrence equation for the Iranians, knowing that if you do this, it will be costly. The question is, do the Iranians think that they can one-up the Americans by talking about what was reported just the other day, which is if the Americans intervene, then their positions in Iraq and Syria would be under attack and again, and if the Americans were going to be held to account in some other way.
Briefly, if you don't mind, I mean, do you think this is something that Israel had been anticipating, banking on when it went ahead with that attack there on the diplomatic mission in Syria?
Potentially. I think this target, the killing of General Zahedi, Brigadier General Zahedi in Syria, as well as the rest of his IRGC cohort in that building, was more a target of opportunity and following people who may have been involved in October 7 or those who were a liaison between Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah in Lebanon. I don't necessarily see it as some kind of trap to get the Iranians in, to get the Americans in, but there are some in Tehran who do see it that way.
Behnam Ben Taleblu, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for the Defence of Democracies. Great to have you with us. Thanks for your assessment.